The brush tool in Photoshop is probably one of the most important tools you'll ever use. There's a lot to learn, so let's just start breaking this down. In real basic terms, what it does is it allows you to paint custom brush strokes on any layer. You can use stroke brushes, or I call them dab or stamp brushes. You can use them on masks. You can also create custom brushes and save them. So let's pull the brush out. And what I'm going to do is just add a new layer. You can't paint on smart objects. It's going to add a new layer automatically if you do that. But if I were to paint on a raster image, it'll let you paint. So what I do, I'll just make a blank layer anyway, even if it's a raster image, and just usually paint on the blank layer. It's just a non-destructive way, so you don't cause permanent edits to a pixel layer. If you right-click anywhere, it'll open up this window. You can also get to that by clicking this down here. This is just the brush preset picker. You can change the brush angle, the brush roundness, the size, and the hardness from here. You can also search for brushes. It's got recently used tools right here. And then it's got your brush gallery with all your saved brushes down here. After that, this toggles the brush settings panel. And we're going to break this completely down right now. It's a lot to it. But when you come here and you set all these settings how you like, you can click this button down here and create a new brush that you save. So let's just start off with shape dynamics. This is where you can adjust the tip shape variation. You got things like size jitter. This is size randomness. You can turn the control from off to fade, pen pressure, pen tilt, and stylus wheel. This just means how you control the actual jitter. Once you click one of these, it opens up these options where you can change the diameter. And then you also got tilt scale. Angle jitter is just the angle randomness. Anytime you hear the word jitter, think of randomness. So if size jitter is the size randomness, angle jitter is the angle randomness. Roundness jitter, same thing. You can also flip the X jitter or Y jitter. And you can see down here, this is a preview of what your brush stroke's gonna look like. So if I turn the control to off, this is what the stroke usually looks like, the preview. So then let's go to scattering. This adjusts the brush scattering and the count. So if I brought the scatter up, and whether you're doing this, guys, you got your preview down here, but you can also come over here and just paint the stroke and see what it's looking like. So if I turn the scatter all the way up, you can see that's what scatter does. Let's turn the count all the way up. Maybe put a little scatter on there. So obviously you got your scatter, count, and count jitter, and you got the controls for scatter and count jitter. Then we got texture. Here you got your pattern picker where you can choose a pre-saved pattern. Say we want water. You got the invert box if you want to invert it. Scale, brightness, and contrast. Most people know what those are. Pretty self-explanatory. Texture each tip is for if you want to set to blend the texture with each individual tip rather than the entire stroke. Then you got your mode. You got multiply, subtract, darken, overlay, color dodge, color burn, linear burn, hard mix, linear height, and height. I'm not going to go over each one of these, but they're just different blend modes. Then you got your depth, minimum depth, and depth jitter or depth randomness. And then you got your control for the depth jitter. After that, we got dual brush. This is where you can basically combine two different brushes. You can have a color mode, and this sets the method of interaction between the primary brush and the dual brush. So what you do is you just pick a mode. You can flip it if you want. Choose a dual brush, your secondary brush. We can adjust the size, the spacing, the scatter, and the count. After that, we got color dynamics. You can apply a color dynamic per each tip. We got foreground and background jitter or randomness. This just sets the color randomness. You got control for that. Then you got the hue jitter, saturation jitter, brightness jitter, and the purity. If you don't want any color randomness, you don't want to mess with the color at all, just don't touch the color dynamics tab. Then we got transfer. This adjusts dynamics for the buildup of the paint or effect. We got opacity jitter, controls for that. Flow jitter, controls for that. Then you also got wetness and mix jitter. After that, we got brush pose, and what this does is adjusts the pose for the brush. Pose has a lot to do with the tilt and the rotation. So you got your X tilt, Y tilt. You can override the X or the Y. We got rotation. You can override the rotation, and you got pressure, and you can also override the pressure. All right, so the next 5 options we got, these don't have other settings you can change when you click them. It's either on or off. So if I click noise, you can either turn it on or off. And this just adds noise to the brush tip. The wet edges, this emphasizes the edges of a brush stroke. Then we got build up. This enables airbrush style build-up effects. Smoothing enables mouse path smoothing. And then protect texture. It preserves the texture pattern when applying brush presets. Like I said, these don't have any extra options. You just turn it on or off. So that's the brush settings panel, everybody. The best tip I can give you for this, if you don't understand anything I just said, just come in here and start playing around with it. Make a stroke, turn the setting up, make another stroke, see what it changes. Turn that setting all the way down. Change the setting all the way up, make a stroke, see how it changes that stroke, and you'll get the hang of it. Again, if you click right here, whatever brush you just created, it's going to open the new brush dialog box. You're going to name it. You can capture the brush size in the preset. You can also include the color if you used any color dynamics. Usually just keep it unchecked if you don't care about anything with the color. And then you just hit OK. And then when you look at your brush panel, it'll be saved here. So let's keep going with the controls. We got blend modes. This is just the blend mode of the actual brush stroke itself. So if your layer has a blend mode, that has nothing to do with the blend mode of the actual brush. Then we got opacity. It's pretty self-explanatory. We got pressure for opacity. I've explained this in other tools, but it's if you have a Wacom tablet or a pen tablet, the harder you press, the more opacity there's going to be. Flow is the flow rate of the stroke. Then we got enable airbrush style build-up effects. After that, we got smoothing. This sets the smoothing for the stroke. This is awesome for if you got shaky hands and there's a lot of jagged edges in your brush stroke. If you notice that it's grayed out and you can't use it, come and pick a different preset. It just means that the settings you have chosen for that brush tip aren't compatible with smoothing. Let's just pick hard round. If I make a line, right, you see how it's a little shaky? If I turn the smoothing all the way up, it's completely straight. It kind of has a little bit of a delay. You'll see how the brush tip goes in front of the stroke. But it's real easy to control it and have it so there's not a lot of shake in it, right? Even if your hand's shaking, it's not going to catch a lot of that. I don't use 100 when I use smoothing though. If I'm using it, I'm using like 25%, maybe 50, and it looks pretty nice when you do it. After that, we got some extra smoothing options down here. You got pulled string mode. This is what it does. I really don't like using that. Then you got stroke catch up. This is where you see how the delay is. If I stop, the stroke will catch up to the brush tip. See that? Then we got catch up on stroke end. So if I click and drag, I'm still clicking down. When I let go, it'll just complete the stroke. Click and drag, let go, and it completes. Adjust for zoom, that's usually checked. Just leave it checked. And that's all your extra smoothing options. After that, obviously, you got the brush angle. And then we got pen pressure for size. This is if you're using a pen tablet, the harder you press, the bigger the brush stroke will be. So let me just hook up my pen tablet real quick and show you. So with this, if I make a stroke, right, and I start real light and just keep going and just start pressing harder as I go, you can see what it does. And then start bringing down the pressure. It gets smaller. Right? So that's pen pressure for size. Pen pressure for opacity. Let me go ahead and show you what this does. So when you press light, it's a real light stroke, right? If I keep going and just keep gradually pressing harder, you'll see the opacity goes up and down with how hard you press on the tablet. You can combine this with this here, pen pressure for size, and you get some pretty cool effects. If I go real light, keep pressing harder, the opacity and the size change. Last but definitely not least, we got symmetry options. You can do vertical, horizontal, dual axis. You got diagonal, wavy, circle, spiral, parallel lines. You got radial. This is pretty cool. And mandala. So let me just show you a couple. Obviously vertical. You'd set the range for it. I just do it like this. And you can move it. Click done. And then anything you draw on this side will draw on this side also. Right? If you draw right in the middle. So that's vertical. Obviously, you know what horizontal is going to do. Dual axis. Everywhere you draw on one, it'll draw it on all four corners. Diagonal, same concept. So wherever your line is, that's where the symmetry is going to occur. Alright, it's pretty easy. Let me just show you radial, because this is a real cool one. It'll open the radial symmetry dialog box, and then you can control the symmetry count. Every section is going to have its own strokes. So if I were to come from here to here, connects them all, right? If I come here, here, connects them. If I make one dot in the middle and keep going and drawing a circle, connects it all. If I just put one line, right? There's a lot of things you can do with this symmetry stuff. Last but not least, I'm going to show you mandala. Again, this opens a mandala symmetry dialog box. Control the segment count. Click OK. It's pretty much like the radial one, but a little bit different. There you go. These are great for making patterns, guys. If you want to shut the symmetry off, you just come up here and click symmetry off. You can also transform the symmetry options. So if we want to transform them, you know, you can do all types of things with this. You can change the plane. so much stuff you can do. So that's all the options for the brush tool, guys. If you have any questions, make sure to comment down below. I'm going to be doing a way more in-depth brush tutorial where we go through and we make like 10 different brush presets and all types of different ones. So make sure to check back on the channel for that. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll catch you in the next one.